even takes office. That's where we start this hour with Professor of Economics and Public Policy at the University of Michigan, Justin Wolfers, plus host of Mornings with Zerlina on Sirius XM, Zerlina Maxwell, and former Republican Congressman and MSNBC political analyst David Jolly, who's going to be with me at the table for the full hour. It is good to see you all. David, let me start with you because I do want to get to the tariffs and how none of it makes economic sense, especially if you were elected because Americans were angry about the high price of goods. But that's not really what this is about. Like, to me, what this story is about is the fact that this man is not yet in office, which means he is not yet in power. He is claiming victory for things that he has not, in fact, accomplished. And it is a reminder of what the first 4 years were and what the next 4 years could be. And my question to you is, what have we learned? What have we learned about how then you call BS?
Yeah, so part of it, what have we learned about how to fact check it? But let's also recognize what we've learned about where America is today. Donald Trump is a fictional president who's a storyteller and a Pied Piper whose followers will believe whatever he tweets out or sends out on Truth Social. And this is a perfect example. Someone who simply by suggesting he wins, now the economy's better, the border's better, peace is better, all these other things. And in Earth One, as Nicolle likes to say, those simply aren't the facts. And to the point of where credit is due, Joe Biden has a remarkable 4 years to point to. But Donald Trump is a storyteller, and he will tell a story that many Americans will follow. And I think it's on the free press and people with conviction throughout the United States to recognize that maybe what he's telling is not always true. I think this is also an introduction of what we're about to walk into, particularly as he stumbles. Right. This is a transition period. All the focus is on the incoming president. You could fault the White House, perhaps, for not playing a little more offense right now. But he will walk into an environment where he is due to stumble, whether it be on tariffs, whether it be on Russia and resigning over, surrendering to Vladimir Putin, whether it be to saying to Turkey, hey, you can have as much of Syria as you want. Whatever these aversions to American democracy are, he will stumble into those and tell lies to cover those up. Right now, he's telling lies about American successes. The real danger happens when he starts telling lies about America's failures.
It reminded me, Zerlina, of all of those Republicans who didn't vote for the infrastructure package and then would go back to their districts and claim credit for it as though they had voted for it. I think it's interesting that you have the president of Mexico effectively being the one to say, actually, that's not how the call happened and that's not how policy works. What have we learned? What do we need to learn as we move forward, Zerlina?
We have to learn that the information infrastructure that we live in, the media infrastructure, it's way too siloed. And the fact that so many Americans bought into, frankly, lies that were told to them by Donald Trump, Donald Trump's media allies, and all of his allies in the Congress, essentially saying the same fictional stories, to David's point, about Donald Trump's plans for the country and what he would do if he were reelected. And I think now, I feel like I went into a time machine, Alicia, to the bad place. And it's really, really difficult in this moment to sort of brace yourself for what's to come, knowing what has already happened in the first term of Donald Trump. But I think it's important that we still do the fact checking. We still point out the lies. We still point out that Donald Trump essentially has run for president 3 times now on complaining about problems, putting forward ideas, not policies, that won't do anything to solve the problems he's complaining about. And unfortunately, too many Americans bought into lies being repeated to them in those media environments on the right wing that are not telling the truth about his plans, what they would do, and the consequences, the real consequences for the American public.
So let's drill down, Justin, on those policies. You have exit polls showing that Trump's victory is due in large part to voters' anxieties about the economy and about immigration, telling to me that on something like mass deportation, you have heads of industry, heads of ag coming out and saying, well, not us, right? Like, you understand that this is not economically viable. What would the actual impact of something like the tariffs he suggested for our largest trading partner and mass deportation be to this country?
Well, the tariff one's really easy, which is this is basically just a sales tax on goods that you import into the country. And so think about the stuff you're buying from abroad, all sorts of goods, all of those, if they're coming from Canada or Mexico, which are our largest trading partners when it comes to things like fruit and vegetables, they're going to go up 25%. And then think about things like the auto industry. I'm coming to you from just outside Detroit, where we're auto central, and we've got a lot of auto parts manufacturers here and a lot actually on the other side of the Canadian border. And actually to make a car, goods go back and forward across the border many times. But if that was going to add another 25% each time, that's creating all sorts of uncertainty for American businesses. And so you have crisis meetings going on in big businesses all around the country, basically trying to figure out how to work around what looked to be a very destructive set of policies.
Steve Bannon, David, wrote about this door that all of this opens to grift, writing, quote, keep an eye on the corruption angle. When tariffs are imposed, administrations often, I like that you've already laughed, administrations often create loopholes and exceptions, opening the door to lobbyists eager to deal. Don't be surprised if the Trump White House starts making assessments about companies and industries that play ball in ways the incoming president likes. Buckle up.
A president who's funding his transition activities without any sunlight or disclosure, including perhaps foreign money. A president who has suggested that, you know, I will flaunt any rules there are and then test me, and it'll take you 2 years to catch up to me. No, there's a lot of danger here, and I think this weaves into the first question you asked, which is, what do we do to check all of this? Because I have a theory, we started talking about it earlier in this week on this show, which is, applies both to the Democratic Party but also to the media and Americans of conviction. In some ways, the Democratic Party today is burdened with being the responsible party. The media is burdened with being the responsible actor. American voters who are trying to check all of this grift and this graft are responsible for being the check on this, when half the country has said, we don't care about being responsible. We just want to be selfish. And Donald Trump is letting us be selfish. And if part of us winning is allowing him to engage in grift and graft and allowing him to engage in some backhanded commerce that we don't see, we're allowed to go along with that. And what is really unsettling about it is, coming off of the election, those who have tried to act responsibly feel the pain of the loss. We didn't wake up after the election and think, oh, I'm upset because I was wrong. We're upset because we know we're right, but we're on the losing side of this battle. And so what does that mean for a responsible media, for a responsible electorate, for a responsible Democratic Party in this environment? The only answer is to double down in holding Donald Trump and his allies accountable, and double down on trying to present a democracy that represents all people, even in a losing environment.
What does that mean, to double down?
It means to keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I understand the autopsy report that you go through when you're losing, but let's not overreact to this. Again, you didn't come out of the election upset because you knew you were wrong. You knew you were right, but you lost. So don't change the fundamental values. Don't just say we're going to give equity to Donald Trump, which some people are doing. In the Democratic Party, in media, among the electorate, they're saying, I just give up. We're going to give him equity. We're going to give him parity to traditional American values. No, that's absolutely wrong. You can't do that. Forgive me for saying that. You can't go to Mar-a-Lago. You can't do it. It's going to get me in trouble. You can't do that. You have to hold Donald Trump accountable for being wrong. You have to hold all of his allies accountable for being wrong. Even if that means you're in a losing environment and you're threatening your own liberty and your own, security as an American. You either believe that Donald Trump and Trumpism is wrong and is a threat to American democracy, or you don't. That's the environment. It's hard.
It is wild to me, thinking to Justin specifically about these tariffs, right? The fact that you have Scheinbaum sort of pushing back and saying, you think you're the only one who can raise tariffs here? Watch me do the same in response. The fact that you're going to have the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade deal come back to the negotiating table in just about a year. I mean, there is a lot here that is volatile for American consumers.
Yeah, look, what an extraordinary moment that the first country that the United States decides to clobber after the election is those evildoers across the border at Canada. Didn't see that coming. We did, in fact, just have an election, and Trump was honest on the one hand, called himself tariff man, extraordinarily dishonest on the other. He actually laid out a policy. He said 60% tariffs against China, 10% against every other country in the world. And then 3 weeks later, that's all out the window because the original policy wasn't thought through. This one isn't thought through, and it's going to be riddled with all sorts of exceptions for all of his mates. Last time Trump did this, there were over 2,000 exceptions that were made for individual companies or individual goods that decided that where the White House was able to decide, we want to hit most people, but but not our mates.
Zerlina, how do you account for that uneven playing field?
Well, there's an uneven playing field because Donald Trump has never been competent and is showing himself to be incompetent again. And I think that, unfortunately, all of the warnings that people were saying, like David and myself and all of the other folks in the mainstream media that were warning about a second Trump term, David is right. We just simply lost in a very close election with more than half of the country not participating, which is something we really need to work on. And I think that now the real consequences for the American public, because that's what I am focused on every single day. I'm thinking about the consequences of Donald Trump's incompetence, the consequences of Donald Trump's corruption, and the fact that he's flouting norms that should essentially be laws in this moment. And we're in a very dangerous situation because we find ourselves in a position that could have been avoided, but wasn't. And now we have to make sure that we mitigate that damage.
Justin Wolfers, thank you so much for getting us started. David and Zerlina, you are sticking with me. Before we go, if you watched Nicole's special last hour about the Separated documentary and want an early look at the film before its MSNBC premiere, it is playing this Tuesday, December 3rd, here in New York City, the IFC Center, with an in-person Q&A following the screening with both Jacob Sobroff and director Errol Morris. It's moderated by Michael Barbaro, host of the New York Times podcast, The Daily. You can scan the QR code on your screen for tickets. It is worth seeing. And when we return, Trump's team rejecting the usual transition agreements, leading to concerns over his cabinet picks' conflicts of interest. Plus, how Trump's selection of a new special envoy to Ukraine will impact the future of their war with Russia. Deadline Wise continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
When you need brutal honesty, when you need answers first thing in the morning, you need your Morning Joe. Weekdays at 6, only on MSNBC.
Sleep more deeply and wake up rejuvenated. Purple Mattress's exclusive Gel Flex Grid draws away heat, relieves pressure, and instantly adapts. Sleep better. Live Purple.
Save up to $1,500 during our Black Friday flash sale. Visit purple.com or a store near you.
With Chime, I get to decide when I get paid. It's kind of crazy. We can't choose when we get paid. Chime changed that for me. My pay lets me get up to $500 of my pay when I need it. There's no interest, no credit checks, no mandatory fees. My pay gives me the freedom to handle anything that life brings. I have big goals, and I'm not waiting for payday anymore. And you shouldn't either. That's why I Chime. Join me at chime.com and get paid when you say.
Ancestors called on us for a reason. To reconnect our people across the entire ocean.
Could have told me we're doing new outfits. Been rocking leaves on my cheeks for 1,000 years.
Disney's Moana 2, rated PG. Now playing only in theaters.
All we want is to find our way home.
I'll get you home. But a crew of murderous bounty hunters is coming after us. We have to move fast.
We have no idea who he is.
You can trust me.
You're a Jedi, right?
Of course.
What just happened?
Watch this.
Skeleton Crew, streaming soon. And now save big on the Disney Plus Hulu bundle with